Hello there everyone, I'm Christina of CSLdesigns and today I'm going to show you how to make these 3D hats wirework bracelets, and these are the ones that I made. So I just made both a silver one and a copper one just to show you how different they can look depending on the wire that you choose. But then we have these hats going all the way along, and they also have this 3D effect because when you look from the side you have these little loops that create the cleft of the hat and give that nice 3D effect there. But the back of the bracelets are still nice and flat, so they're comfortable to wear still. And then that's what they look like. And it will then look something like this on your wrist. You can see it give a really nice effect of all those hats being connected to each other, going all the way around your wrist, and also that 3D effect. So they look really cute on your wrist there, and obviously it's perfect for Valentine's. And I also think it would be a really nice piece to oxidize because that would really help emphasize the texture of all the hats there. But obviously it's completely up to you and what you prefer. But then if you want to learn how to make them, then keep watching. So these are the materials that we're going to use. Now all we're really going to need here is 2 different gauges of regular round copper wire. The first one is a 0.8mm and this is the base wire. And then we have a 0.4mm here, which is going to be the weaving wire. And now you can choose yourself how you want to finish off your bracelet. You can either make your own clasp if that's what you prefer, or you can use finished clasp, which is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to use this Lost or Claw clasp and extend the chain and attach it together using the jump rings there. So let's get it all ready and let's get started. And then we need some lengths of our wire, and what I have here is 4 lengths of about 50 centimeters each, and these are all going to be the base wires. And then we also need some lengths of our weaving wire. So what I have here first of all is the length of about 70 centimeters of the 0.4mm wire. Now this is just to start out with. What I'm going to actually do is continue to cut 70 centimeter lengths and adding them into the piece. So we just need to start out with one length and then we're going to keep adding in more. So then to begin with here we need to start our weave. So what I'm going to take first of all is 1 length of my base wires and then also a length of my weaving wire here. And then first of all I want to attach my weaving wire to the base wire. I'm just going to leave a short tail and work towards one end here, leaving about 5 or 7 centimeters or so that we can use to finish it off. And then just hold on to that short little tail. Then I'm just going to wrap around the base wire once with the weaving wire. Push it down like that. Becomes nice and tight. So we have one wrap now, and this weaving wire is now attached. Then we need to bring in the rest of the base wires gradually as well. So what I'm going to do is take one at a time, take the next base wire, place that above the other one and on top of the weaving wire there, and then I take my long end of the weaving wire, go across the top of both of them and then down behind, making sure that this wrap that I've just done lays next to the first one, so that single one. And then I need to come straight up between the 2 base wires with the weaving wire. So I'm just coming up between them there. And then I also like to then grab the weaving wire and push down because that helps tighten up the weave. And then I grab my next base wire and lay that above the previous one, so that's the new top one. Just lay them flat next to each other here. And then we need to take the weaving wire across the top of the next 2 top wires there and down behind. So I'm wrapping across the top of these 2 top base wires. Come down behind and then again straight up between the 2 that I just wrapped across the top of. And again just push it down to help make it tight. And then we need to bring in the last base wire. That's the new top one. Make sure the ends here are fairly even. And then wrap across the top of both of them now, the top 2. Come down behind. And then come up between the 2 that you just wrapped across the top of. So just pull it straight up there. And then now we just want to wrap around the top one by itself. Just to finish off this round here of the weave, like that. And then we have the weaving wire coming straight down behind all of the base wires again. And once we've then done that first round there of the weave, we basically just now need to continue this, repeat it over and over again. So we have the weaving wire coming down behind all the base wires, and below that bottom one. Then I'm going to go around and over the top of the bottom one by itself first of all. So down between the bottom two base wires to just wrap around that bottom one by itself to start out the new round here, and then we wrap across the top of the bottom two base wires, so down behind, right in the middle of all of them, and behind those two, come back down again, and then up between those two that we just wrapped across the top of, push it down so it comes nice and tight, wrap over the top of the next two. So we're constantly just taking one step up, you could say, moving towards the top gradually, and up between the two, and then across the top of the top two base wires to come up between them, and then be able to wrap around the top one by itself and bring it back down behind all of them, and then that's another 4 round. And you just want to push them close together. What you can also do, that I find helps a lot, if you struggle getting them really close together, you can use a pair of chain nose pliers and just help push them so they sit nice and close, and just straighten them out if you need to. So something like that. And then you basically just want to keep doing a few rounds of this. Now I'm going to do about 1 centimeter or so right in the beginning here before we start making any of the hats. So now that I made that little section of my weave, then we reach the point where we need to start making the 2 separate legs of the weave, you could say. So we need to change over. I'm just going to open up my base wires a little bit. So just basically separate them out right there in the middle. So I have 2 more towards one side and 2 more to the other side. It's just to get enough space to work with. Then I'm still using the same weaving wire that I have left that I was using for that first bit. I'm just going to bring that up between all those space wires right there in the middle. And then what we need to do is start weaving the exact same weave here, just around 2 base wires, 2 at a time. So I'm just going to focus on the top ones here. So I take this tail and it's coming up between right in the middle. Just kind of pretend like the others aren't there. Just get them out of the way. Then I'm going to go down between the 2 base wires and then push that down and then come up below again. And then we need to wrap across the top of both of them. So that's the exact same technique as the weave out here. And the only difference is it's just 2 base wires instead of the 4. Then I'm going to go straight up between the 2 like we did before as well. But now all we have left is that single top one. So we just immediately go to just wrap around that by itself. And then it comes right back down between both of them. But make sure to push this tight, nice and close down. Then we bring it up again below the bottom one of those 2, and we just start again. So around the bottom one by itself, and then over the top of both of them, then up between the 2, to then just wrap around the top one by itself. And then that's another round. So basically you want to keep doing this now until we have the length that we need. And that length is, in my case, I've decided for the size that I want the hats to be, I'm going to make this length about 2 centimeters. So what you can either do is just take measuring tape and obviously keep measuring it. You need to measure it as you go, so you obviously don't end up weaving too long a length, but if you measure it as you go, you can easily just see if you need a bit more. Now what I also like to do, and I find really handy, is before I start measuring any of these tails that I'm making, I just take my measuring tape but then a piece of scrap wire here. Then what I've done is on one end, I've basically just measured in that 2 centimeters that I want, and then obviously put a pair of pliers, chain nose or flat nose, and then I just bent it. So this short length that I have on that end there is actually 2 centimeters. So I just find that makes it a lot easier to keep measuring the tails. So instead of continue to take out the measuring tape there, kind of a bit bulky in that, I have this length of my wire that I can just keep handy and keep in measure against the weave that I'm doing. So obviously I would measure from the middle there between the 2 sides of the base wires, and then as I go measure until I get to the length where it meets with the length of the piece of scrap wire there. And I would do the same thing with all the tails that I'm doing. This is a little tip I find that much easier and handy to work with. So I then weave that 2 centimeters on this one side, and again just to check against that little measuring tool that I made, just like that. You can see it fits just nicely. Then what we need to do is repeat the exact same thing on this other side, and to do that we need to bring in a new weaving wire. So this is just where we have those several lengths of the weaving wire cut off. You can just cut off a few at a time or one at a time, whichever. And then we need to lay this behind. So basically now we're starting out a new weaving wire because we don't have that much length left on this tail, and obviously we're starting back down from the bottom down here. So I just put my weaving wire behind, leave a short tail to hold on to, and then we just repeat the exact same thing but on these 2 base wires. So I just go around the bottom one of the 2 by itself first of all, also to attach the weaving wire, and then what can also help is just separating them out a bit more if you need to make space right there in the middle for the weaving wire here. So just like that, and then go over both of them and make sure this gets pushed all the way down so it sits right there in between. And again, what can help is just take a pair of chain nail pliers to help push it down if you need to. It can be a bit easier to get right in there. And then just to wrap around the top one by itself, go over the top of that to then come down behind both of them to then repeat. And this is then that one full round of the weave around these 2 base wires. Just tighten that up there. And you just keep repeating this until you have the same length. Again, if you have this little tool, just use that to measure until you have these 2 little legs, you could say, of the weave around the base wires. So now weave both tails here, and then we still have this weaving wire left on the bottom one. It's a long length. We're going to continue using that, but only after we made the first hat here. So it's really up to you how you want to hold your piece now, how you feel more comfortable. Personally, I prefer to kind of hold it upside down like this, with the end sticking towards me and the long ends of the base wire sticking away from me. And then I'm just going to leave the weaving wires out of the way for now. And then we need to use these weave lengths to make the hat. So just make sure your weave and your base wires are pushed all the way down so we don't have a gap down here between the main part with all of the base wires and then those 2 separate tails there. So what I'm going to do is take one at a time. It doesn't matter what side you start with. I'm going to start with the left one in this case. Then I'm going to start bringing the tail here back towards me, pretty much right down where it separates out. And bring it back over the top of itself. And then, so we can see from the side here, we start getting a little loop. And bring it down nice and tight. So we have just a little opening on the side. You can always adjust this more. And then we bring the end here back around underneath itself. Then I'm just going to flip it around a bit. I like to look at it from a different angle. And then keep bringing it around. I'm going to bring this out to the side a little bit as well. And we need also this end of it to end up laying flat with the initial wraps that we did, weave around all 4 base wires. So we need to bring it continuously up there until you can see it gets closer and closer and lays flat, and we just have that little circle pretty much we've made. And then I'm going to bring it a bit out to the side, away from that little circle, and then I put my finger kind of on the inside of it and start bringing the end of it in towards the middle. And this is really adjusting it until you're happy with how it looks. And then as it's being brought in, you can see this is going to end up being 1/2 of the hat. It's going to end up meeting there with the other side once we make that. But then I also want to make sure that this bottom part of it, I want to bring that back out so it's straight. So you just kind of push against the bottom part of that weave and then bring the base wires back out. Just grab hold of them there, separating them. And then also just kind of get it to this point, and we can always adjust it more when we make the other side as well, and obviously we'll bring that around and then we can more easily see how they fit together. So I'm going to then make the other side in the exact same way. Just want to make sure that this still lays flat, so we have the 2 base wires there still laying flat next to each other. Then I'm going to do the same here, with the other side, start bringing that back over the top of itself to first of all make that little loop and just get it as symmetrical as possible. And then start bringing the tail back around, and you can always check from the side as well, see if those loops are roughly the same size. And then along the way, maybe sometimes your weave that you're moving the tail here will kind of come apart a little bit. You can always keep pushing that down as you're shaping it. And obviously here you can see we just need to bring this out a bit. Open that up so we can get the outer curve of the hat as well. It's basically right here in the middle is where we made the cleft. It's what we just made with these little loops. And then, if you feel like they're pretty similar, maybe you just want to tighten it just a little bit more. Then I want to start bringing the end of it back in towards the middle. Give it that nice curve, and then obviously remember to straighten them back out at the end. And then once we've done that, we can start to compare them and see how they're going to form the complete hat, and see if there's anything we want to adjust, because I recommend doing that as you're making the hats here, because we can't really, once we've continued the bracelet and go back, we can't really then adjust them much, a little bit but not too much. So I'd rather get them as correct now as possible. You can see these two legs of the weave are going to end up laying next to each other, flat next to each other, so we end up with these 4 base wires also flat next to each other again, just how they were there in the beginning. And otherwise just do any little final adjustments, but otherwise this is really the hat. And then we have these two ends back laying flat next to each other. Now this is also where you just want to check your weave, so I'm just going to bring it to the side again to keep flipping it around depending how you need to kind of hold it and look at it. And also it might be helpful just using a pair of pliers if you need to straighten these out a bit more. Then you just want to check your weave lengths as well, because we need to make sure that they end in the same place so they're even. So in here you can maybe see that one looks a little bit longer. It could also be if I need to adjust it a little bit more. But if they do end up being not completely even, all you can do is just maybe undo 1 or 2 of the sections of the weave or rounds, or add 1 or 2. Really depends on how you feel like it's going to be even for you, because we need them to be even so we can then just continue with our weave. So when you're then happy with how your hat looks and the ends of the weaves there are nice and even, then we need to connect all 4 base wires together again. So basically we just need to make the same as we did in the beginning, and you just want to make sure you kind of straighten out your base wires as much as you can so they can lay nice and flat next to each other like this. But otherwise what I'm going to do is take the bottom length of the weaving wire here, so don't take any little tail that we have left, but take that longest length that's coming from the bottom one. And then I'm going to continue using that, start with the same weave. This is basically just like in the beginning. Obviously now we just have all the wires there already, but we do have the 2 separate sides that are not connected. So just keep with the same weave, and then we're going to automatically bring the 2 sides together. Come up between those bottom 2 there. And then now is where they're going to get connected naturally by going over the top of the 2 middle ones, like we would normally do with all 4 base wires. But that just captures and tightens the 2 sides together again. Just want to separate the base wires out a little bit. Don't tangle them up too much. And then come up between them. So you can see it's the exact same technique. We're now just making sure that we connect the 2 sides. And then the top one there. Push it down as well. And then just the top one by itself. So otherwise then you want to make sure that you then also push the weave down as much as you can. So obviously it becomes nice and tight and pretty seamless as well. And otherwise you then keep repeating this for another few rounds. What I like to do is do 3 rounds of this weave around the 4 base wires before I then start the next hat. Otherwise you then just, after you make that, you do the initial individual lengths of the weave separately again. the same length, use that same measuring tool if you have that, and then you shape the hat in the same way, and otherwise you keep repeating this by keep adding in that new weaving wire as well as you go, and then obviously get to the length that you want it to be. So I then kept going here making all the hats, and then it looks like this. So we have a full length of wire work here, but with these hat shapes created by the weave. And then what I've just done at the end after the last hat, after you reach the length that you want it to be, minus whatever length your clasp is going to add obviously, I just finished it off using the same weave there around all 4 of the base wires. So the same that I did in between the hats, and I just did personally 4 rounds, but it's really up to you how long you want that end piece to be. So now all that's left to do is, as you can see here, I've still got all the lengths of all the weaving wires left, so we need to finish them off. You can either do it along the way if you prefer, it'll be the exact same method, or you can do it now once you've got the length. That's completely up to you. I'm just going to show you how to do that. So for that I'm going to use both some flush cutters here and some chain nose pliers. Quite fine as well, just so we can really get in there and make sure to tuck the wire away. So I'm just going to start from one end of the bracelet. You can see here I have all the wires kind of going in different directions. So I'll just take this you can see on the back is kind of wrapping around the base wire and it's coming out in this direction. So you always want to make sure to kind of stick with the direction that's already wrapping in. Then what I'm going to do is go in and take my flush cutters. I'm doing all this on the back of the piece. Then I want to cut off the excess, and this just wraps around that outer base wire by itself. But I want to cut it off so I have just a tiny little tail left. Something like that. And then if you put your finger over it, you can feel your little end of the wire sticking out. So obviously we then need to take the chain nose pliers there. So you can see it right there. And then I'm going to basically just squeeze it down. And because there's that little bit of the end left, what that does that is when you squeeze this down, it's going to nestle in between those 2 base wires and basically get tucked out of the way. And that way, you're rid of the excess wire, but also make sure you run your finger over it so you can't feel it there. If you can feel it, you need to squeeze it down a bit more. If you can't, then obviously that's fine, because you just want to make sure that it's nice and comfortable to wear against the skin. Obviously this is going to be the back, and the wires is the same with all the rest. This one is kind of in between in the middle of the hat there, and it can be a little bit awkward, but you literally just put your pliers in, again just cut off the excess, same principle. So you have a little end left, and then you just get your pliers in there however you can to make sure to squeeze the end down. So there you go. And you just get rid of all of the excess weaving wires in that exact way. So now I got rid of the excess length of the weaving wire, then this is what it looks like, and this is more or less going to be the final look to it. So this is the front where we have the kind of 3D shape coming up, and then the back looks like this. So you also have quite a nice shape on here, but this is obviously where it's flat, so it's going to be nice and comfortable against the wrist, and it looks like that from the side. So then what we need to do now is finish off the ends, and we're going to finish both off in the same way. Now all I'm going to do is make a loop on each end there, because I'm going to attach a separate clasp to that. So I'm going to first of all just separate them out a little bit. Then what we need to do is get the 2 middle lengths, so these 2, and I'm holding the front upwards here. I'm going to bend these 2 a bit towards the front and just separate them out a little bit, kind of so they come out in a V shape like that. Then I want to just flip the piece around, and then we need to use the other 2 lengths. So I'm going to start with one, and all I'm going to do is bring it from this left side, looking at it like this, over towards the right, and just pretty much as far down as it'll go, straight across the back, right after where the weave ends. And the other one is going to do the same, but just in the opposite direction. So just go across the back and bring it down to equal level. So they're now crossing straight across like that. And then I'm going to use these 2 to make the loop. So I'm just going to grab my pair of chain nose pliers, and I have this length that's going towards the right is the one that's in front of the other one, so I'm going to grab onto that, but just so basically just after the midpoint. So just if you need to open it up a little bit, you can do that. Grab onto the length of wire, because then when I then put a bend into it, it's going straight up away from the end of the piece. That is then more or less in the middle. And this is actually what we're going to make the loop with. We're still on the back here. So we have that bend in place. Then I'm going to take the other one that's going out to the opposite side. It's already behind this bend. I'm going to bring this around right down where that bend is. Then I'm just going to start twisting my piece while I'm kind of wrapping this length of wire around the other one. It's going to also help secure them together. You can see there we're getting a few wraps, and then that's nice and secure. So then I'm going to cut off the excess of the one that I just wrapped. So I'm just going to get my cutters again, cut off the excess here, and then always make sure to just squeeze down that little end, because otherwise you'll be able to feel it a bit sticking out, just so it's not going to irritate anything or catch on anything. So there we go. And then we have that wrap there on the back. We have these two that we kind of stuck away from the piece in that V shape. They're towards the front. So what I'm going to do now is keep them separate and bring them towards the back on either side of this wire in the middle. Just do one at a time. Bring it all the way around towards the back so it comes straight down like that on the back side. The same on the other side. And they kind of just hug that wire there that's been wrapped right in the middle. And then on the back here, all I'm going to do is cut off the excess, but I make sure now that I leave just a short little tail after where they're wrapping across the top there. So just a bit below where I have my wrap. So something a bit like that. Same with the other side. There we go, got rid of those. Again, I just need to take my chain nose pliers and we need to squeeze these in, and I like to kind of push them a bit in underneath the wrap there to really get them out of the way. But then it's also nice and secure. And just make sure you can't feel anything by running your fingers over it. So now we've kind of got rid of all the wires. All that's left is this single one in the middle. And with that, I'm going to make that loop like I mentioned. So first of all, I want to put a bend into it. I'm holding it to the side, and I need to go just above the previous wrap there, leave a little bit of space on the bare wire before I then put a bend into it. Then I take my 6-step bell making pliers. In this case, you can also use a pair of round nose pliers. It's completely up to you. Then I'm just going to use the smallest loop and make a loop. So make a full circle here all the way around. You can see a circle there. I'm going to then take my chain nose pliers again, or flat nose, hold onto that circle, and then wrap the end around just below the circle and basically fill in that gap that we left initially until we have no more space. Just need to squeeze it a bit tighter. And then it's coming around and basically meeting up with the wire that we cut off in the back. We need to cut off the excess of this one. So cut that off, and again just make sure to squeeze that down. And then there you basically have your loop on one end. And I'm just going to use this to attach the clasp that I'm using. So you want to finish off the other end in the same way. And all that's really left to do is obviously attach a clasp, but then shape the bracelet as well. So once you've finished off the ends and you've attached a clasp, to shape the bracelet you can either just shape this around something that has the size and shape you want it to have, or you can just use your hands and fingers. So you just want to go into a place and start here. You don't want to go in and make a big bend because it will put out of shape, but you just go in and kind of put a gentle curve in there and then go back and forth until you can see that you gradually get more and more of a curve, and then we'll want the two ends end up meeting up facing towards each other. So obviously we can use the clasp, and obviously make sure that the 3D part there is facing outwards and the flat part is facing in towards what will be your wrist. And this is then what the final bracelet looks like. So I just chose to make one in both copper there and silver to show you the different looks you can get just depending on what wire that you choose to use. So you have the hats going all the way around with that nice effect. And from the side you have those little loops, but actually those are the ones that create the clefts, so the hats. And gives that nice 3D effect from the front, but on the back it's still nice and flat, so it's comfortable to wear as well. And that's what they look like. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I have loads of others on my channel, so feel free to check them out. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching this one, and I'll see you in the next one.